In this lesson and this lecture, we're going to be talking about the process of writing a research paper on the topic of a historical analysis of the book of Matthew. This is your research project for this quarter, and you'll be working on this until the end of the quarter, the last of the quarter, and the research project will be due on the last day of the quarter. And again, your research project is a historical analysis of the book of Matthew. So let's just, for a few moments, discuss the research process and what I'm expecting in this particular research project and paper that you're doing for me. Step one, let's just again review the introduction of the paper. You must have a clear introduction, body, and conclusion in your research paper. Just like in your essays you've been writing to this point, I've been grading you on having a clear introduction, a clear body, and a clear conclusion. Your introduction must have two main parts: a clear thesis statement. An example of a thesis statement concerning a historical analysis of the book of Matthew would be this: a historical analysis of Matthew is essential in understanding the central message of the book of Matthew. This paper will examine the historical context of the book of Matthew. So there is a couple of statements that help you summarize a thesis statement for a research paper of this type. And again, I'm always looking for a keyword to introduce your points in the body of the paper. In other words, this keyword helps the reader link and transit from the introduction and your thesis statement to the body of the paper. And the keyword is always plural. And again, this reminds you, all papers do not necessarily have to have an obvious keyword, but it needs to be implied. I'm sort of grading you this quarter on putting a keyword in because it forces you to think transition. So an example for a keyword would be several important areas. There's your keyword, areas, in the historical study are examined in order to get a clear understanding of the historical context of Matthew. So that's an example of a keyword, an example of a thesis statement. And just remember, the introduction of this research project you're doing, this research paper, must have an introduction, body, and conclusion. Now, step two, the body of the paper. The body of the paper is the presentation of your points. So in the body of your paper, you're going to be presenting the points in your paper. The points of the paper are the areas that you've just mentioned with the keywords of a historical analysis. The areas make up the body of your paper. These areas are, and these are the areas that you will need to have in the body of your paper, which are the points: the author of the book, the date of the book, the reason for writing the book, the theme and purpose of the book, who are the recipients or the first readers of the book, the type of literature, and the cultural background of the book. These are the areas that will need to be your main points. Now, as you discuss these areas and as you look at the different resources for researching your paper, you will notice that some resources will say that one author was the author of Matthew, and maybe another source will disagree. The same holds true for the date of the book. Some authors will offer one date for the book, and then other authors may disagree. These are the things you'll want to document in your paper where they disagree. And in the conclusions of your paper, you can come down on where you probably are or may stand on that issue, but in the body of the paper, you're going to be documenting the differences there that your sources have. So these are the areas that are in the body of your paper. As we continue to look at step two, your body, there are various research sources. There are three kinds of sources when you're looking at research: primary sources, secondary sources, and tertiary sources. Primary sources are those sources written at the same time of the writing of Matthew, which is what you're writing your paper on. In other words, a primary source is a source written during that time. In other words, Matthew is a primary source. Plotinus, Herodotus, Thucydides, who are writing of the history of the time, Josephus, those are other writers that may help you draw conclusions about those. But the primary source is a source written by the person you're writing about. Of course, Matthew would be a primary source, or during the time that the document you're studying was written. So Matthew and anything written during that time, they'll give you information on the historical context, would be a primary source. A secondary source are books and articles that analyze primary sources. Secondary sources are journal articles and commentaries. So a secondary source is a commentary or journal articles that will talk about the historical context of Matthew. A tertiary source, these sources are Bible encyclopedias and dictionaries that help you understand more about the historical context. Make sure the tertiary sources you use are well edited by reputable and established scholars and researchers. Beware of Wikipedia and other sources on the internet which are not edited by known scholars. So, in other words, when you're using tertiary sources in Bible dictionaries, make sure that these dictionaries are written and edited by reputable scholars that are the scholars in the field of biblical studies and historical studies. Step 3 is the conclusion of your paper. Your conclusion must summarize the points in the body of the paper in a concise and clear way. The conclusion should also offer your conclusions concerning the disagreements among the sources you used in the paper. So again, your conclusion is a summarization of your paper and of the body of your paper. Now, just a few words on documentation. The documentation of the sources used in the research paper is a necessity. When you use someone else's sources or someone else's words or ideas, you must document. This is very, very important. Plagiarism is a dangerous thing. You must document the sources you use. And again, when you use other person's words or their ideas, you must use this. You must document. In this research project, you're required to use footnotes. A footnote is your documentation at the bottom of each page where you actually cite a source or you quote a source. Sample papers are posted on Moodle for Lesson 6. Several websites are helpful in helping you learn how to document your sources. And these websites I have offered here are very good at helping you understand and giving you samples of what a documented paper and a footnoted paper looks like. The website InfoPlease is very good at giving you information on how to document journals, websites, books, newspaper articles. InfoPlease is good. A sample paper on this link is offered for you to use. And if you look at the sample paper offered here, you can see a sample paper that shows you what footnotes and the title page looks like. And again, you'll be required to have a title page on your research paper. Purdue University, Purdue Online Writing Lab is a good reference for helping you learn how to cite resources. The Microsoft site given here is a site that will help you learn how to use Microsoft Word to document your papers and footnote them. Kate Turabian 8th edition. This particular site will show you how to, again, cite books, research articles, and journals and newspapers and websites that you'll be using. Georgetown University Library is another good site that you can link there and help you to learn how to document your papers for this paper. Austin Community College District Library Services is another wonderful site in helping you document the various sources you may be using for your paper.